Welcome to a journey through the hidden vaults of automotive history. When we talk about the evolution of the car, we usually focus on the legends that filled our streets and the icons that defined generations. But behind the glossy brochures and the famous racing victories lies a darker, more mysterious archive. This is the realm of the classified machines vehicles that were intentionally hidden from the public eye, prototypes that were deemed too radical for their time, and experimental projects that were buried by corporate espionage, political pressure, or financial ruin. These are the 20 automobiles that the world almost forgot, machines that exist in the thin line between reality and urban legend. For decades, many of these vehicles were kept under lock and key. Some were developed in secret military facilities, exploring alternative propulsion systems like nuclear energy or advanced turbines that promised to change the way we travel forever. Others were the result of rogue engineers pushing the boundaries of aerodynamics and speed, creating shapes that looked more like spacecraft than traditional cars. They represent a lost future, a glimpse into what our world could have looked like if these projects hadn't been classified or canceled. Today, we are declassifying these files. We will explore the stories of ambitious dreamers who challenged the giants of Detroit, European designers who prioritized art over mass production, and Japanese innovators who built supercars that the world wasn't ready to see. From cars that vanished during world wars to electric revolutions that were crushed before they could start, each of these 20 vehicles has a story of brilliance and misfortune. We aren't just looking at metal, rubber, and glass. We are looking at the ghosts of innovation. So, sharpen your focus and prepare to enter the secret history of the road. These are the 20 classified automobiles that were almost forgotten, and today, they finally return to the light. The Bugatti Type 57 SC Atlantic, La Voiture Noire. We begin with the ultimate ghost of automotive history. Between 1936 and 1938, only 4 of these masterpieces were ever built, featuring a stunning teardrop design and a distinctive riveted dorsal seam. While 3 remain accounted for, the second car produced, Jean Bugatti's personal La Voiture Noire, vanished without a trace during World War II. It was last seen being loaded onto a train to escape the German occupation of France. Its location remains a classified mystery. If found today, it would easily become the most valuable object on wheels, a billion-dollar relic of a lost era. It represents the pinnacle of pre-war elegance, hidden by the fog of conflict. The Ford Nucleon in 1957, at the height of the atomic age, Ford engineers proposed a vehicle that sounded like science fiction. The Nucleon was designed to be powered by a small, replaceable nuclear reactor located in the rear of the chassis. The vision was a car that could travel over 5,000 miles without ever needing to stop for fuel. However, the project was quickly classified and eventually shelved when the cold reality of radiation shielding and the potential for a mobile Chernobyl in every fender bender became apparent. It remains a haunting symbol of a future where we almost traded gasoline for radioactive isotopes, a classified dream of a nuclear-powered highway. The Mercedes-Benz C112. In the early 1990s, Mercedes-Benz developed a mid-engine supercar intended to be the spiritual successor to the 300 SL Gullwing. The C112 was a technological tour de force, featuring a 6-liter V12 engine and pioneering active body control. It was so impressive that Mercedes received over 700 confirmed deposits from wealthy collectors. Yet, in a shocking move that remains a subject of corporate debate, the board of directors abruptly canceled the project and classified the development data. They decided that Mercedes didn't need a supercar to prove its worth. The C112 was relegated to a museum, leaving hundreds of enthusiasts wondering what could have been. The Tucker 48. Preston Tucker was a man who wanted to challenge the Big Three in Detroit with a car that was decades ahead of its time. The Tucker 48, famously known as the Tucker Torpedo, featured a directional third headlight that tracked with the steering wheel, a pop-out safety windshield, and a rear-mounted engine. However, the established industry saw him as a threat. A series of aggressive SEC investigations and negative press campaigns, many believe orchestrated by competitors, eventually bankrupted the company. Only 51 cars were ever completed before the factory was shuttered. It stands as a classified example of how corporate politics can bury revolutionary safety innovations. The Oldsmobile Aerotech. Throughout the late 1980s, Oldsmobile sought to shed its image as a brand for grandfathers by building a series of high-speed experimental vehicles known as the Aerotechs. These were sleek, long-tailed machines that looked like they belonged on a salt flat in the year 2050. The Aerotech broke multiple world closed-course speed records, proving that the Quad-4 engine was a powerhouse of engineering. Despite the massive investment and the record-breaking performance, the Aerotech was never intended for the public. It was a classified laboratory on wheels, designed to test the limits of physics before being quietly tucked away into the shadows of the GM Heritage Collection. The Chrysler Turbine car. This was perhaps the most audacious consumer experiment in automotive history. In 1963, Chrysler bypassed traditional piston engines entirely, producing 55 cars powered by A831 gas turbine engines. These power plants were essentially jet engines for the road. They had 80% fewer moving parts than a V8, required no antifreeze, and could run on almost any flammable liquid, ranging from diesel and kerosene to vegetable oil and even Chanel No. 5 perfume. After a public user program where ordinary families drove the cars for 2 years, the project was abruptly classified as a financial liability. Instead of selling them, Chrysler reclaimed and crushed 46 of the vehicles in a massive scrap heap to avoid import taxes and liability issues. Only a handful of these jet cars survived, serving as a mechanical ghost of a turbine-powered future that never arrived. The Datsun Roadster SRL 311. While the world remembers the 240Z, the SRL 311 was the secret weapon that established Japan's reputation for performance. Known in Japan as the Fairlady 2000, this was a high-compression 2-liter beast that dominated the SCCA racing circuits in the late 60s. It was a giant killer, consistently embarrassing more expensive European sports cars like Triumphs and even Ferraris. However, as Nissan transitioned its global branding, the SRL 311 was pushed into the shadows of history to make room for the more marketable Z-Car lineup. It remains a classified favorite among underground racing circles, a car that was too fast and too raw for the corporate image Nissan wanted to project to the mass market. The Willys Capeta. Emerging from the burgeoning Brazilian automotive scene of the 1960s, the Capeta, which translates to the devil, was a stunning display of domestic engineering. Built in 1964 by Willys Overland do Brazil, this GT coupe featured a sophisticated fiberglass body and a modified Aero Willys 6-cylinder engine. It was meant to be the flagship of Brazilian luxury and sportiness, showcasing that the country could produce vehicles on par with European Grand Tours. However, after the company was acquired by Ford, the project was deemed redundant and classified as a non-priority. The Devil never saw a production line, and the sole prototype became a rare relic, representing a lost chapter of South American high-performance ambition. The Gurgel Itaipu, named after the massive hydroelectric dam, the Itaipu E150 was an incredible visionary project from Brazil in 1974. Long before the modern electric vehicle craze, Amiral Gurgel designed a compact, geometric electric city car. It was the first of its kind in Latin America. Gurgel envisioned a world free from oil dependency, but the lead-acid battery technology of the time was heavy and offered limited range. The project faced intense skepticism from a government and industry heavily invested in traditional fuels. Eventually, the Itaipu was relegated to the status of a classified curiosity, with very few units produced. It stands today as a heartbreaking reminder that the electric revolution could have started decades earlier if the world had been ready to listen. The Vector M12. The M12 was an American attempt to out-Lamborghini. Created during a turbulent period when the Indonesian company Megatech owned both Vector and Lamborghini, the M12 used the chassis and the V12 engine from the Diablo, wrapped in a wild, futuristic American body. It was a car of extremes, but it was born into a corporate nightmare. After only 14 production cars were built, the company collapsed amidst lawsuits, hostile takeovers, and financial scandals. The M12 was effectively classified out of existence as the factory was shuttered and the remaining parts were seized. It remains one of the rarest and most misunderstood supercars of the 90s, a jagged edge of American ambition that was cut short by backroom business deals. The Lancia Stratos HF0. Before the Stratos became a world-conquering rally icon, it existed as the HF0, a concept car so radical it redefined the limits of automotive architecture. Standing only 33 inches tall, this ultra-wedge-shaped machine, designed by Marcello Gandini at Bertone, was fully functional but looked like it had been dropped from an alien spacecraft in 1970. To enter the vehicle, the driver had to flip up the massive glass windshield and step over the steering column. It was a classified exercise in pure aerodynamics and geometry over logic. While it never went into production, its DNA influenced every supercar that followed. Yet the original prototype spent decades tucked away in private collections, a silent witness to a future that was too bold to be built. The General Motors EV1, perhaps the most controversial vehicle on this list, the EV1 was the first mass-produced electric car of the modern era from a major manufacturer. Released in 1996, it gained a cult following among celebrities and environmentalists who leased the vehicles in California and Arizona. However, in a move that sparked decades of conspiracy theories and the famous documentary Who Killed the Electric Car, GM abruptly canceled the program in 2003. Despite the desperate pleas of drivers to buy their leased cars, GM classified the project as a failure, repossessed almost every single unit, and famously hauled them into the desert to be crushed and shredded. The few surviving units were disabled and donated to museums under strict, no-drive contracts, effectively erasing a decade of electric progress from the road. The Dome Zero, in 1978, a small Japanese company called Dome set out to create a supercar that could rival the likes of Lamborghini and Ferrari. The result was the Zero, a striking, low-slung wedge that looked like a silver blade. It was intended to prove that Japanese engineering wasn't just about economy cars, it was about world-class speed. Despite its stunning design and a successful showing at the Geneva Motor Show, the Dome Zero failed to meet the incredibly strict homologation standards required for Japanese road use. Efforts to certify it in the United States also stalled. With no legal way to sell the car to the public, the project was classified as a dead end for production. Though it found a second life as a digital icon in racing simulators for generations who would never see one in person. The Aston Martin Bulldog, designed in 1979 to prove that Aston Martin could build the fastest car in the world. The Bulldog featured a twin-turbo V8 and massive power-operated gullwing doors. It was a brutalist masterpiece of flat planes and hidden headlights. The goal was to hit 200 miles per hour, a nearly impossible feat at the time. However, as Aston Martin faced severe financial difficulties in the early 1980s, the new management viewed the Bulldog as an expensive distraction. The project was shut down, the plans were archived, and the only prototype ever built was sold off to a private collector in the Middle East. It remained a classified legend for over 40 years, until it was recently rediscovered and restored to finally prove its 200 miles per hour pedigree. The Puma GT4R. Brazil's Puma was world-renowned for its fiberglass sports cars, but the GT4R is a phantom among them. Created in 1969 as a marketing masterpiece for a magazine competition, only 3 of these cars were ever produced for the lucky winners. Based on Volkswagen mechanicals but featuring a completely bespoke, aggressive fastback body, the GT4R was a sophisticated take on the sports luxury concept. Because it was never intended for the assembly line, the specifications and tooling were never formalized for mass production. This makes the GT4R a classified holy grail of South American motoring, a car that everyone saw in magazines but almost no one has ever touched. It remains a beautiful enigma of the Brazilian automotive golden age. The Panther 6. In 1977, the British manufacturer Panther Westwines decided that 4 wheels simply weren't enough for a luxury supercar. Inspired by the Tyrrell P34 Formula One car, the Panther 6 featured 2 steered front axles with 4 small wheels and 2 massive rear wheels. It was powered by a mid-mounted, 8.2-liter Cadillac V8 engine with twin turbochargers, claiming a theoretical top speed of over 200 miles per hour, a figure that was unheard of in the late 70s. Despite features like a built-in television and a telephone, the project was so complex and expensive that only 2 were ever built. One was kept in the UK and the other vanished into a private collection in the Middle East, becoming a classified curiosity of excess that the world quickly forgot as the company faced financial collapse. The Stout Scarab, long before the Chrysler Voyager or the Renault E-Space, there was the Stout Scarab, Designed in the 1930s by William Bushnell Stout, a pioneer in aircraft engineering, the Scarab was a visionary attempt to turn a car into a mobile office or living room. It featured a smooth, unibody aluminum shell with a rear-mounted Ford V8, allowing for a completely flat floor and modular seating that included a folding table. It was the world's first true minivan, but its design was so alien to the public of the Great Depression that it was met with confusion. With a price tag double that of a luxury Cadillac, the project was classified as a commercial failure after only 9 units were hand-built. Each one remains a masterpiece of Art Deco design, hidden in the shadows of pre-war history. The Zunder 1500, Argentina's automotive history is filled with ambitious projects, but the Zunder 1500 is perhaps the most intriguing. Launched in the early 1960s, the Zunder was a bold attempt to build a high-end sports sedan using a fiberglass body and, most notably, a Porsche 1,500 cubic centimeters engine. It was an unofficial cousin to the Porsche 356, offering German performance in a South American package. However, the company struggled with the high costs of importing components and the political instability of the region. The project was eventually shuttered, and the Zunder name was classified as a failed venture. Today, the few surviving cars are prized by collectors as the Argentine Porsche, representing a moment when a local startup dared to dream of global performance standards. The Intermeccanica Indra. This car was a beautiful mutt of the automotive world, combining Italian styling by Franco Scaglione, German chassis engineering from Opel, and raw American V8 power from Chevrolet. Unveiled at the 1971 Geneva Motor Show, the Indra was intended to be a world-class Grand Tourer available in coupe, 2+2, and convertible forms. However, just as production was ramping up, GM, which owned Opel, pulled the plug on the supply of engines and chassis, reportedly to protect their own Corvette sales. The supply chain was effectively classified as closed, and Intermeccanica was forced to end production after only 127 units. It remains a stunning example of what happens when corporate gatekeeping kills a project with massive potential. The Schlorwagen, the Pillbug developed in 1939 by engineer Karl Schuler. This vehicle represented the absolute peak of aerodynamic research. Built on a Mercedes-Benz 170h chassis, the Schlorwagen had a drag coefficient of just 0.15, a number that most modern supercars still can't achieve today. It was a silver, wingless fuselage on wheels that could seat 7 people and achieve incredible fuel efficiency. However, the onset of World War II saw the prototype seized by the German military. Some reports suggest it was tested as a high-speed transport, while others claim it was eventually destroyed or lost in the chaos of the Soviet occupation. It remains a classified ghost of aerodynamic perfection. A what-if that could have changed the shape of every car on the road today. As we close the files on these 20 extraordinary machines, we are left with a haunting realization. The history of the automobile is not just a straight line of progress, but a graveyard of brilliant ideas that were simply too early, too bold, or too threatening to the status quo. These classified automobiles remind us that innovation is often a dangerous game. For every iconic car that made it to the showroom floor, there were dozens of others, like the jet-powered Chrysler or the nuclear-inspired Ford, that were silenced by corporate fear, political maneuvering, or the harsh realities of their time. These vehicles represent more than just mechanical engineering. They are the physical manifestations of human imagination and the relentless drive to push beyond the horizon. They were the glitches in the matrix of the industrial world cars that dared to rethink how we move, what we burn for fuel, and how we interact with the wind itself. While many of them were crushed, hidden in secret bunkers, or lost to the fog of war, their influence continues to ripple through the industry today. We see the ghost of the Lancia Stratos Zero in every modern supercar, and the spirit of the Gurgel Itepu in the electric revolution currently taking over our streets. The lesson here is simple. Never assume that what we see on the road today is the limit of what is possible. There are always secrets waiting to be rediscovered in the archives of the great manufacturers and the dusty corners of forgotten workshops. By remembering these 20 classified automobiles, we honor the dreamers who refused to play it safe. They may have been almost forgotten by the masses, but to those who look closely, they remain the ultimate symbols of an unconventional path. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the shadows of automotive history. Keep your eyes on the road, but never forget to look for what's hidden just out of sight. Until next time.